It's time for another episode of Let's Talk Business South Carolina, featuring industry outlooks, panel discussions on trending topics, and interviews with business executives, community leaders, and government officials. And now, coming to you from the Drum Creative Studio, here's your host, longtime South Carolina business publisher, Rick Jenkins.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Business South Carolina. We're up to number 34, episode 34, if you're keeping count. As always, we're coming to you from the Drum Creative Studio, and I'm your host, Rick Jenkins. Our first guest today will be Sarah Lyles, the Executive Director at PalmettoPride. PalmettoPride is the state's anti-litter organization, and it was founded a little more than 2 decades ago. They work to prevent litter through education and supporting enforcement measures and mobilizing volunteers. And when I say volunteers, I mean a lot of volunteers. Sarah's here to talk about that, and she will explain how you and or your business can help. There are a couple of words that came into the public's general lexicon shortly after COVID hit in March 2020, and those 2 words were supply and chain. If you were searching and searching for toilet paper, you suddenly became aware that there was something wrong. I still don't understand that. Well, that's just a lighthearted example of how things can go south quickly when the supply chain is disrupted. Fast forward a few years, and companies have now learned their lesson. They are taking steps to ensure that we do not experience disruptions like that again. And they discovered that in order to make our supply chains run as efficiently as possible, we must be innovative and adopt new technology. Joe Perkins, he is the Executive Vice President of Operations at Carolina Handling, and he is here to share how technologies such as artificial intelligence are being used to streamline supply chain processes. However, before we get to Sarah and Joe, it's time for a segment we do from time to time called An Executive You Should Know. This segment, as always, is brought to you by our friends at Greenville Technical College. Greenville Tech offers plenty of corporate and continuing education opportunities for business executives that are interested in career advancement. I appreciate that they partner with us on this segment and make it possible for you to meet someone like Karen Weaver. Karen is the owner of Oasa Day Spa. Let's take a few minutes to meet Karen, and then we will be right back for the rest of the show, and we will talk with Sarah and Joe. Don't go anywhere. See you in a sec. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a segment that we do from time to time called An Executive You Should Know. And as I mentioned in the intro, it's brought to you by Greenville Technical College, and I so appreciate those guys for helping bring this type of content to you. And it's always good. I always enjoy sitting down and talking to someone that I've not met before, and that's the case here with Karen, and I'm glad you're going to get to meet Karen as well. Karen Weaver, she is the owner and founder of Oasa Day Spa. Karen, welcome.
Thank you.
It's good to have you here.
Good to be here.
And we had not met until you showed up, and so I'm glad to have met you. Now, your spa is in Greenville, North Street?
It's in the Overbrook community on East North Street.
East North Street?
Yep.
Oh, got it. Okay, so before we get into what can happen at the spa, which I really want to talk about, Oasa is Danish for oasis.
That's correct.
That's correct. And your father was a Danish immigrant, correct?
Yes, he was.
And he came over here. When did he come to America?
He was 10 when he came over. So
Okay.
he grew up mainly in America,
Got
but
it.
his father started the anesthesia program at UMass. And so he immigrated over, and it's actually an interesting story because he lived in the slums, and he's a brilliant man, and I think he was an equivalent in 5th grade, and they started him in 2nd because he couldn't speak English. So he has a pretty incredible story of making it in America.
And this is your grandfather.
So my grandfather was that started the anesthesia program, but my father was the one that they started him like 3 grades early.
I got it. What a great story.
Yeah.
Is your father still with us?
Yes, he is.
Wonderful. Well, I'm sure he's going to enjoy hearing you talk about Oasa. Now, Oasa means oasis, right? And I can, of course, guess why you named it, but give us a little insight into that.
Well, so our tagline is your oasis in the city, and I wanted to use a Danish word for the spa. It's Scandinavian inspired. The aesthetic is very Scandinavian. I love that part of my heritage, and so I wanted to kind of bring that into the business. And I liked the way it looked, honestly, with the 4 letters, and then that it meant oasis. And like I said, we use that as your oasis in the city.
Right. No, it's great. And I will say, folks, that just go to their website, and we'll put the URL here for you. But go to their website. You all have this really cool 360-degree tour that you can take and just click along and see what the spa looks like. So tell me about the spa.
So we offer facials, brows and lashes, massages and nails. It's a non-toxic spa, so everything is very clean. All the ingredients we use, the products we use. We don't do any acrylic nails, for instance. It's all just natural nail services, so everything smells very good there too. We have a couple of relaxation rooms where people can enjoy time there, either before or after services. And we have lots of refreshments, mimosas and hot teas. And so we really are trying to create a space where people can spend some time out of their day and kind of relax and recharge so they can show up as the best version of themselves for the people they love.
Mimosas and massages.
Mimosas and massages.
That's a good tagline.
Yeah.
You ought to consider that.
Yes.
I love it. Have you all, well, before I go there, when did you start it? 4 years or so ago?
July 2020.
Okay, so about 4.
So
Oh my
3.5,
goodness,
during
right?
COVID.
In the wake of COVID.
Yes, we did.
So that probably was a tough beginning?
It was a very tough beginning. Hard to navigate. Things changed all the time.
Right.
Lots of challenges.
Yeah, I bet it was. And so starting a new business at that point, exciting and also probably a little nervous and a little anxiety about it.
Yes, yes, absolutely. We've grown. I think it brought the team together very quickly, also because people were really lacking that social connection, and so the team, and then also people were looking for a place to go. Nobody was really traveling, so
Right.
they were kind of looking for an escape. And so, we've been successful from the beginning, thank goodness, but it has not been easy.
Yeah, I can imagine. Were you doing something in this industry, this line of work before?
So that's where Greenville Tech comes into play, because
Yeah.
I went to Greenville Tech and got my aesthetics certificate as kind of a third career. My kids were getting older and I was trying to decide what to do next, and I've always been interested in skincare, and so I went to Greenville Tech and got my aesthetics certificate and opened my own one-room space for about 2 years there, and then actually bought that building on East North Street, which was a great find, and then bought it, started renovating, actually got our building permits the week that everything closed down for COVID. So I guess it was kind of a blessing in disguise. I couldn't really work, so we just spent time renovating the building to open the spa, and then opened in July.
Always been an entrepreneur?
Here and there, I was a stay-at-home mom, but I always did something on the side. And then I did a lot of volunteer as PTA president league for 3 years, which was kind of an entrepreneurial
Sure,
position. With volunteers that weren't employees but volunteers, and budgets and things. So, but yes, I've always been an entrepreneur.
Now, you talked about Greenville Tech. So Greenville Tech did not give you your educational start, but you certainly went back to it at some point.
Yes.
As you decided that you wanted to go in a different direction. And it's what we always talk about, not only Greenville Tech, but technical colleges in general. There's such a good opportunity for continuing education opportunities, upskilling yourself to get ready for a new career. And so how did you find your time at the college?
It was wonderful. It adequately prepared me to take the test, to get, that's the main point, to pass the practical and the theory exams, so that we can get our certificate and then do our own thing. My instructors were fantastic, hands-on, really enjoyed my time there.
I'll get you out of here on this. Any advice for those seeking to start their own business?
Well, you have to be okay with the risk, calculated risk. But I would say, as far as my story goes, I didn't go to Greenville Tech until I was, I think, 46 and opened the spa at 48. And so I'd say it's, never too late to kind of chase that dream and go after it.
That's right. I love it. I love it. Karen, it's good to meet you.
Thank you, you too.
Folks, that's Karen Weaver. She is the owner of Oasis Day Spa, and I'm going to go for a massage and a mimosa sometime soon. Tell the wife about it tonight.
Yeah.
We'll see you soon. Okay. That is another segment of an executive that you should know. Let's get back to the program. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Talk Business South Carolina. Appreciate you joining us, and I hope you just enjoyed that segment of An Executive You Should Know, again, brought to you by our friends at Greenville Technical College. PalmettoPride. They are South Carolina's anti-litter organization, and their primary goal is to entice citizens basically not to litter. You would think that would not be a problem, right? But it is not always as easy as it seems, and there are challenges. Since 1999, get this, I'm going to read this to make sure I get it right. The organization has helped more than 713,000 volunteers remove almost 90 million pounds of litter in South Carolina. That is a big job, and the person in charge of it is Sarah Lyles. She is the executive director at PalmettoPride. Been there a couple of decades now, Sarah.
I have. I've
Right?
grown up at PalmettoPride.
I know. I know. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. You and I have talked before on another show that I used to do, and I'm so glad that you came back to talk this time. Palmetto Pride, it interests me so much because I find it sometimes, Sarah, disheartening that it takes so much effort to keep litter off of our roads, off of our beaches, off of our natural areas, but it certainly does.
Yes, it is a big problem with probably one of the easiest solutions to any problem.
Just don't do it.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But why do you think the problem is as persistent as it has been?
Well, I will say first off that litter has been reduced by 60% since we started. And we have seen our population increase by 24% in that time, and litter has not risen to that same level, which is a good place to be right now. But we have to think about that population increase. That means we've got more neighborhoods being developed, so that's construction and debris. We've got more solid waste vehicles driving up and down our roads. There are more people driving up and down the roads. And, a lot of litter is unintentional. Somebody might put something in back of a pickup truck and it hits a certain mile, and it just goes right out of the back. And then we've got problems with, no trash cans. So you might have somebody who's at a park and they've, got some trash and they look for a trash can and it might not be there. So, of course, the right thing to do would be just keep it with you until you, go somewhere else. But
they don't always do that.
Sometimes it, doesn't always happen.
And I was well aware of the improvements you made, and it was where I was going next. You have been there for 20-some years,
I have.
right? Did you start when it started?
No, I started in 2002. So
It started in when?
The late 1990s was the first task force.
And now you correct me if I'm wrong, but did that come about because of one football coach named Lou Holtz, who took the South Carolina job, and all you South Carolina Gamecocks will know this. He had been a coach at Notre Dame for a decade or so, took a couple years off. He was a TV analyst. Then all of a sudden he says, hey, I'm going to come back and I'm going to coach South Carolina. Wow, what a great get for us, right? Mm-hmm. He comes to South Carolina on his inaugural press conference. He says something along the lines of, I bet the folks in South Carolina's cars are incredibly clean because all of the trash is on the road instead of in their car, which caused people, understandably, to like, oh my gosh, which indirectly or directly led to Palmetto Pride. Am I right about that?
You are correct. You are correct. So around that same time, Senator David Thomas, who's from Fountain Inn, he was filtering a lot of constituent complaint calls. So he pulled together some legislators, and I think he took Lou Holtz's comment and said, okay, I'm going to seize the moment.
Yes.
And what grew from a conversation with a handful of legislators, they met again, and it became, council, and then it became the Governor's Council on Beautification and Litter, and then in 2002, they transitioned to a 501c3. So.
Right. And if there is a state, and there's several of them that would fall into the category, but there is a type of state that certainly needs litter control. It is somewhat like a state like South Carolina. Beaches, mountains, state parks, all kinds of natural areas that are important for us to keep clean, right?
Absolutely. We've got such a beautiful state, but it's hard to keep it clean.
Right. So that happened in 2000. 1999, right?
Yep.
You came a few years later.
I did.
And then about a decade ago, you took over as the lead at Palmetto Pride.
I sure did.
And you all have done a fantastic job. You have done a fantastic job.
Well, thank you.
But it's always a challenge.
Yes.
90 million pounds of litter in the last 20-some years.
Yep.
Tell me about What does it look like? I mean, how do you coordinate 700,000 volunteers over the course of 2 decades?
We have a lot of good local coordinators. So we have Keep America Beautiful. We're the state affiliate for that organization. And now we have 37 local affiliates. Keep South Carolina Beautiful is the 38th, and we've got 2 in the pre-certification stage. So we've got a lot of folks at the local community level to help filter those volunteers. We also have been coordinating Adopt a Highway for Department of Transportation since 2012. So trying to connect the local volunteer coordinators has been a really good way for us to maximize our reach. So they can help with supplies at the local level, or they can coordinate their own events and then have volunteers come in. So really it is having a point person in every county, in a lot of cities as well, that has helped us to achieve our goals.
Well, let's continue there for a sec, because I have heard you say that there are 3 things to do to prevent litter, and one of them is infrastructure, which is kind of what you're touching on there. Another is to make sure that consequences exist, and then the other one is just changing our behavior, right? But let's start with the infrastructure.
Okay.
Give me an idea of what you're looking for.
Well, we need trash cans or recycling containers. We need those at the municipal level, county level, and state level. So all those entities, the buildings and grounds have places to put your trash.
And Sarah, I'm sorry, but you would think that that would be the simplest thing in the world, but it's not for some reason. Is it just, it's purely dollars and cents?
It is. It is. There's very, very big life-saving needs out there. We've got, from gun violence to feeding everyone. So we understand litter on the grand scheme of things might not seem like it's the most important aspect, but it is a gateway. It is a gateway to community health and economic development, and it really is can be a cornerstone to how a community develops or how it falls apart. So yes, we need trash cans. We need places to put trash. We also need those trash cans emptied. So, we've seen restaurants, for example, that have had trash cans and they don't get emptied, so they overflow, and then they just remove the trash cans rather than just making the emptying of the trash receptacles happen more often. So we also have things like there's an incident at a park that was being revitalized in an area of the state, and the landscape architects placed 4 trash cans, which is great. But using, I don't know if you know much about Walt Disney World, but they have a full-on, their solid waste management plan is incredible, very well known for it. So using the Disney model, the local Keep America Beautiful affiliate just realized that they needed 29 trash cans in that same area. But if you think a nice trash can is $500, $700, it can be $500 to $1,000.
Never would have thought that, but okay.
And so these things, the manpower to empty, the manpower to put them up,
Right.
The infrastructure needs are there. They're critical, but they do cost.
Right. Before I get on to consequences, let's talk about funding, since you just talked about how expensive a daggone trash can is. Who'd have thought it, right? But let's talk about funding. How does the funding exist for PalmettoPride?
We are 501c3, so we get grants and we get private donations. We also do receive a portion of court fines that we take and we filter back out into grants and law enforcement training and Keep America Beautiful affiliates. So about 90% or more, that's a low average for us, a low number for us, but it goes back out into the communities, and that's from Secretary of State's number. So we're proud of that.
Well, court fines is a good segue into the consequences piece of it. Tell me, what now are the consequences if on a first offense for someone throws a McDonald's bag out their window and a cop sees him and catches him? What's that look like?
So several years ago, we changed we helped to change the state litter laws to accomplish several things. One was to put the definition of litter back into the state law. The other was to separate offenses based on the weight. So a cigarette butt, a bag of, an empty bag from McDonald's or from some other fast food place, we should probably just say fast food and not McDonald's, will cost anywhere from $25 to $100 without, then you've got the court fees on top of that. So it can still cost, several $100s for that initial, that low level of litter. That's what we constitute as a litter, like an individual putting out a small item. But then we get into illegal dumping, and that's where the fines get higher. So, state fines range from $25 to upwards of $1,000, and then that can double with court fines. And illegal dumping is its own offense now. We also increased the number of mandatory community service litter pickup hours and made it so that they don't have to be supervised, which will open up a field of volunteers or, community service volunteers. So they don't have to be supervised by an employee, which, will help save money on behalf of a local government.
Exactly. And then there's behavioral change.
Yes.
And that's probably the key to it all, but it's not an easy thing to do. Do you all have dollars for promotion, for some type of advertising? How does that work?
We do. So we do advertising across the board. Our numbers are lower than they used to be because that's just the way the world is now. So, but we do. Yes, we do advertise across all fields. We have social media up through, streaming services, but we do a lot on local news. We really feel that the way to reach people is through their local channels. We do, local media, and we have radio. We do have some billboards out there. So we really try to cover all of our bases. It's just very hard to really reach people. We can reach them in a million ways, but the attention span is just, seconds. We also have our Litter Trashes Everyone puppet show that we go around to schools. We're about to have our 5,000th show.
How about that?
So
what's that called?
Litter Trashes Everyone. It was created by the Columbia Marionette Theater. We've reached more than a million school children in 20 years, but we put a lot of emphasis on awareness building.
While we're talking about promotions here, I remember, and you and I talked about this years ago, the last time you and I sat and had this conversation, but the best promotion on litter, the anti-litter campaign that I've ever seen was many, many years ago in the late 70s when, and if you're of a certain age, you know this, where it showed the Native American on a horse on the side of the road and somebody goes by and throws out a bag and the tear comes down the guy's face, right? And, I still remember that to this day.
Yes.
That was impactful. Too bad we can't. Do we have national promotional help on that anymore? I don't see it.
Yes, we do. So Keep America Beautiful has a new director, a new president, and she's fabulous. Her name is Jennifer Lawson, and they have really worked in the past couple of years to beef up their image and their promotional materials. So they're doing a great job. But again, with all the different ways to reach people, it's hard to reach people.
That's right. I understand. And it's more, like you say, it's more expensive every day to do these types of things. So I get it. You got to have funds, which we're going to come back to in a second. But I've heard you also say that you're either going to pay now or you're going to pay later.
Yes.
For the litter problem. What does that mean, sir?
Well, that means that we can be progressive about it. We can make sure that our solid waste infrastructure is sound and appropriate for our needs. That would be trash cans, making sure that if you're a solid waste hauler, you've got the best equipment to fully cover that load. If you are if you drive a personal pickup truck, make sure that you cover that load every time you go. So we can prevent that way. And if you don't, it's going to cost us in job loss. It's going to cost us in community safety. We've had instances in recent years where we've heard of businesses not coming to cities and counties because of litter in the neighborhoods. Right. And you look at community safety. There was a great study done with Keep Indianapolis Beautiful last year, and they were able to discover that violence decreased 12% within a half mile of green space.
Yeah, I've seen that.
So that's just impactful. It's that's what we say. It's litter's not just an eyesore. It really does impact the overall health of a community.
Yeah, and talking about paying now or paying later, I would assume that it is so much cheaper to pick it up as it occurs as opposed to waiting and going out afterwards.
Absolutely.
And an extreme example of that is all these documentaries you see on cleaning up the ocean now, right? That's costing billions and billions and billions of dollars to try and save, the the wildlife that
Yes.
that occurs in those situations, right?
Absolutely. In South Carolina, we have this past year spent, we've had about $8 million with the Department of Transportation to clean up interstate and their highways. But some states spend $20 million, $14 million. It's expensive to pick up. So we would like to focus on preventing it from getting out there to begin with. And then we can.
Sarah, I'm going to get you out of here on this. How can businesses help you? You got quite a few folks that are watching right now that are business executives. What can they do?
Well, they can help us with creating a culture of keeping things clean. First off, let's start with their own campus. Make sure you keep that clean and help with your employees. Do employee engagement, adopt a highway, go do a local litter pickup with a Keep America Beautiful affiliate. There's a lot of ways you can get involved that aren't going to cost you that much money, but help us with the conversation. Help get good policies passed when they're needed. Just become responsible. We've all got to be responsible for this. We're, as Lieutenant Governor loves to say, we are citizens, not customers. Yeah. And that really has made a big impact in how we look and we talk to people as that.
I love that line, and I've heard her say it before, Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evett, and I do know that litter prevention is a passion of hers.
She's wonderful, yes.
And I've heard her speak on it many times before. Sarah, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Folks, that is Sarah Lyles. She is the Executive Director at PalmettoPride. Do your part. Do your part to stop litter. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with our next guest.
I bet you want a website that drums up business. You see, every business wants to have an effective online presence that helps their business grow. We guide you through our process that will drive results by clarifying your message with a beautiful design that's strategically optimized for search. Stop wasting your time and money on an ineffective website and let us help you drum up business by designing a website that speaks to your audience and delivers results.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Talk Business South Carolina. I'm your host, Rick Jenkins. It's good to have you. As I mentioned in the opening, it wasn't too long ago that many of us didn't even know what the words supply chain really meant. It wasn't part of our lexicon. It wasn't a conversation that we had. It just something we did not discuss. It existed in the background, but we really didn't know what it was about. And then something called COVID hit in March of 2020, and then that all changed. And if you ever went to the grocery store or Costco or Sam's and you were looking and trying to find that product that you never have a problem finding, but all of a sudden it wasn't there, you started hearing about supply chain. Supply chain challenges have become a lot bigger, and the impact is a lot more than just the shortage of toilet paper that existed in March of 2020. And that's what we're going to talk about today with this guy. Companies now are having to make a lot of investment in their supply chain to ensure that all this craziness doesn't happen again in the future sometimes when something gets thrown at us. And a lot of times it all comes down to technology and using technology to fix a modern problem. And that's what we're doing today with supply chain. And so this guy, Joe Perkins, is the Executive Vice President of Operations at Carolina Handling. Joe's going to talk to us about all kinds of tech that is used today, including artificial intelligence. There's another thing that we never stop hearing about these days, AI. Joe, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me, Rick.
It is good to have you here. You joined me not too long ago, and we had a nice conversation, and I'm looking forward to this again. So I appreciate you being here.
Absolutely.
You're in Greenville?
We are. So Greenville, Charlotte, Atlanta, Alabama.
Right. But your office, you sit in Greenville.
No, I actually reside in Charlotte.
There you go. Okay. So you came down. Our studio, of course, is in Greenville. You came down from Charlotte today?
Yeah, I did. In Greenville quite a bit. Great city.
It is a great city. Carolina Handling, you all are a supply chain consultant, and that's what we're going to be discussing today, but you do a lot of other things as well. And so just briefly, kind of give us that rundown, a little elevator speech of what you guys do.
Certainly. So obviously into service, new equipment sales, automation, things like that, rentals. But I think, the last couple of years and even since COVID, we've really taken on this identity as an integrator to where we can pull together all the different pieces of what we do and our customers' needs to be able to create that ecosystem around their supply chain so that they are fully functioning and as efficient as possible.
Right. We talked about COVID from the from the outset and how that has made such a dramatic change on so many things, of course, including supply chain, maybe more than anything, right? Tell us, what did we learn as a society from a supply chain perspective about when COVID hit?
Sure. So I think there were a couple things, right? The dependency on labor at that point in time, and we saw this exodus of a big portion of the workforce. I mean, a lot of the baby boomers were retiring or set to retire right there around the time of COVID, and they created this gap in the workforce that, quite frankly, we haven't filled yet. I don't know if we're going to be able to fill it. The stats kind of say it's improbable. Right now, there's a job opening for every half person, right? So not even enough people to fill the roles. I think the other things that we learned were the dependency related to the supply chain, right? So whether it was suppliers of, the retailers and things like that, but there were a lot of single source supply situations where when that source wasn't able to provide, we saw retailers or manufacturers that halted production. So that was another big area that we saw.
Yeah, I mean, you've got two varying degrees of supply chain issues, right? We make fun of the toilet paper crisis, but make no mistake, it was a crisis. But it's way over here on the scale. But then you've got, as you just alluded to, you've got somebody, and I'm using this just because it's an OEM here in South Carolina. You got somebody like BMW, who might have had to have slowed down production because they couldn't get bolts to attach this part to that part.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it. And, COVID impacted different parts of the world in different ways. And so there were overseas suppliers that were shut down much longer than what we were here in the U.S. And so, again, to your point, I mean, BMW, depending on someone in another country, maybe they weren't open for business yet.
Artificial intelligence, let's go there for a second. The whole point, or one of the points of our conversation today is how we are improving supply chain efficiencies through the help of technology. And artificial intelligence, anytime these days that we're talking about technology, AI, regardless of the industry we're discussing, it could be the media industry, it could be manufacturing, it could be supply chain, AI is always in that conversation. So how is AI helping the supply chain world?
The first thing that comes to mind is, chatbots, right?
Yes.
I mean, every single time you get online to do something, chatbots are there. And when you look at the consumer and their interaction, I mean, it used to be with a human. So I think the supply chain experience starts from the point of purchase. And so we're seeing that interaction that is happening. But many retailers are now using AI even to give you visibility as to the products that you may be purchasing from them and what that would look like in your space. So whether that's driving sales or whether that's helping prevent returns in the supply chain, that's another area. We're also seeing...
Hang on a sec, Joe. I'm sorry, but I want to make sure I understood what you just said. Tell me that again in a different way.
So I know my wife does it a lot, right? She'll go on Amazon and she's looking for a table and she can literally film the room and say, hey, what would this table look like in that room?
It.
And so then all of a sudden it's like, no, I don't like the look of that table with this paint scheme. And so it prevented her from purchasing, which means they don't have to ship it. We don't have to return it. Again, kind of aids the supply chain a little bit there.
Makes sense.
But as far as what we're seeing on our side with our customers, a lot of AI in the routing optimization. So we're moving products. How do we most efficiently and effectively move product, whether that's fuel consumption reduction or whether it's reducing labor or if it's getting products there faster. We know there's a lot of it. At a plant level, we're seeing a lot of scanning and technology in the plants that actually is watching production, managing production, and there's even areas where it's so sophisticated that it can look at the plant production and move the order of raw materials up or back so that inventory becomes much more just in time. We know that, we're not landlocked here in the Southeast, but in many areas, the footprint of their building can't be expanded. So they really can't carry much more. And then I think the last piece is, we were at Modex 2 weeks ago. And the amount of AI technology that is hitting the robots and the cobots and stuff like that in that space to where human interaction is really removed.
Now, Modex, that's the one of the world's largest supply chain conferences in Atlanta every year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's move from artificial intelligence to what they call big data.
Okay.
And analytics. And, we've had folks on this show before talking about analytics, maybe in the form of predictive analytics. But, what we're getting to is that there is technology now that will allow you to take huge sets of data and parse it into something that can actually be handled, right? And using that data to make predictions about what might happen or what you might need to increase efficiencies. Tell me how it's being used in supply chain.
There is so much data coming at us on a daily basis. Just on the drive here, mentioned coming in from Charlotte, using ways to get down here and the number of points that it wanted me to add data just so it could change its routing relative to anyone who may be coming behind me. But whether it's point of sale data or even weather patterns, being able to use that and understand how the consumer may purchase, what they need to have on hand as far as inventory, and then even as far back as, talking about those raw materials in order to produce more. There's a lot of that. There's also a lot of visibility relative to the movement of goods. So something that supply chain lacked for a long time. You would put an order in, you would know that it had gotten loaded, but you didn't know where your truck was, when we were going to receive it, whether it was going to be in time. So there's a lot there. But I'll even go as far as to say just recently, the telematics that we have on forklifts, much like the telematics that are on your car, there are so many data points coming to us right now. And so some of our guys have actually written code that can take the failure points that are happening and being processed in the background to be able to look and say, this is indicative of a failure that may be coming with that truck, so that we can dispatch a technician to get out there and make the repair, hopefully keeping that customer from having a breakdown that may slow their supply chain.
All of this stuff, and we talked about how this began kind of in the wake of COVID. It didn't begin in terms of improving efficiencies, but it certainly took off. How much of this effort to improve efficiency and all the things you're talking about resulted because of COVID? It just seems like, if COVID hadn't hit, we might have continued to kind of do this.
I think we absolutely would have.
Yeah.
And, you said it earlier in the show, a lot of our customers are figuring out ways to shore up their supply chain. They want to have the data and understanding of where things are, how they integrate, and all of that. And the more data that they have, the better their decision making gets, not only in the products that they may be building, but also in the way that they're serving their consumer.
Yeah, all the things I'm hearing you talk about, this technology is not only increasing efficiency for the supplier, but it's increasing efficiency, of course, for the customer.
It is.
Right. Let's talk about reverse logistics. When we were talking before we came on the show, in the last several days about, what we were going to discuss and just kind of batting things around, you talked about reverse logistics, and at first I didn't quite get it, but I just knew it by a different terminology. But this subject fascinates me. So explain reverse logistics to the viewers, and then let's dive in.
Okay. So again, something that I think post-COVID and really relative to the e-com explosion, but reverse logistics is simply stated, it's the consumer having to return the product back to the manufacturer and them getting, or the retailer, and them getting it back into the correct location.
Right. And I also told you before we came on that, I don't remember exactly when, but at some point I had a representative from Amazon on the show, and we were talking about this. And they were sharing how the warehouse for their returns is not as big, but surprisingly close to as big as their warehouse for the product that's going out, which means that reverse logistics is just huge.
It is. And, I'll tell my wife a little bit, right? If we're going to a party or something and she's looking for a shirt, she may buy it a couple different colors. couple different styles, and she's only going to wear one there.
That's right.
But there's going to be 7 or 8 that are returned. And the likes of Amazon or whoever may be in this e-commerce type business, they're having to deal with those returns coming back. And unfortunately, the consumer doesn't take the time to always put the medium back in the medium box or the small in small box. Right. And so they're faced with the challenge of getting all of these different products back, colors, sizes, and sort, and they've got to figure out how to get it back into their inventory so that they can sell it again.
You said you're going to tell on your wife. Well, I'm going to tell on mine. Several months ago, my wife had a business trip to New York, and she did exactly what you just said. She went online, and she bought several pieces of clothing, and knowing that if she bought 10, she was going to wear 3, and she just, whatever. So she did that. I'm sorry, honey. But but she sent them back. But like I was telling you before, there was something that she bought, and I don't remember right now what it was, but it was a somewhat cheap item. And she called to ask about returning. They said, just don't return it. Just keep it. Because they understood that returning that item was going to cost them more than giving it away, which is what wound up happening.
Yeah. So many, I'll tell you, that happens far more often than probably what we know, because you're right. I mean, between the labor, making sure it gets back in the right place, because if it gets back in the wrong place, now I potentially misship it to someone else and I have another return that I have to handle. But I think the big thing for a lot of our customers is getting it right the first time. Yeah. Because if I get it right the first time when I ship it, I don't have to worry about that return. And so we're actually seeing a lot of technology that is based around the people that are picking orders and shipping these products, whether it's voice-based technology or RF scanning or something, but really trying to ensure that they have 100% accuracy whenever they're shipping products to their end user.
Yeah, let's keep going down that road for a sec. You talk about your customers. Give me an idea, because I just kind of want to follow it through. Give me an idea of the types of customers we're talking about.
Oh, gosh. So there's 8,000 of them. I'll say that.
Right. Just pick out a couple.
But, I mean, we're in a little bit of everything. So, I mean, we've got auto manufacturing, a lot of the Tier 1 suppliers that support them, a lot of distribution centers, so retailers, pharma, a lot of food processing that we're involved in.
All right. Let's talk about a retail outlet. What is the type of thing that you might do when you went in there to help them? I'm assuming we're talking about organization ability that increases efficiency, but tell me what that looks like.
So, we've got a tagline that we need to optimize before we automate. A lot of our customers, not saying that their processes are bad or archaic in any fashion, but there's always an opportunity to remove waste in processes. And a lot of times when you work in the same space each and every day, there's things that you could change that you just become numb to. Right. And so we typically would start with whether it's a lean assessment or some type of an assessment to look at their processes and really help them understand how lean management could help them remove. And then once we've done that, we typically look to automate. Most of the things that we're looking to automate are, really in an effort to reduce travel. So if we see people that are walking across facilities or traveling across facilities all day long, that may be an opportunity for us to introduce some level of automation that would eliminate them having to do that function. I mentioned earlier, implementing processes or technologies around certain ways that they move product. So whether that's an automated forklift or adding conveyor or what have you.
Sometimes, and I'm guessing here, but I would guess that sometimes people bring you in, you have consultation. You don't know how much money that might be able to be saved because of the efficiencies that you are going to implement, but it's there. But there's not a way to really put a finger on that kind of thing, right? Or do you have some feel? How does that work?
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
There are some opportunities where we can go in and look at how labor is being utilized, and we can look at what part of that labor would be removed and then exponentially give them what the return would be if we change their process or something like that. But you're very much correct. I mean, when we walk in, we know that there is typically some low-hanging fruit that we can help them with. There are absolutely some customers out there that have teams of people that are on staff, engineers and things like that, that are constantly looking for these improvement opportunities. That when we were brought in on those, they typically know what they want to do. But for the lion's share of our customers, we know there's opportunity.
What about auto manufacturers? You say you work within that group of folks, and of course, auto manufacturing is huge in the state of South Carolina, whether it be BMW or Volvo or Daimler or whatever have you. What are the types of things how you help that group of folks?
There's a particular T1 or Tier 1 auto supplier here just down the road. And just a few years ago, we went in and they had several people that were dedicated to driving a tugger inside the facility, pulling carts to deliver parts to the line. And we were able to go in and automate the route that person was driving. We also gave them carts that when the automated tugger would pull up to that station, it would send a signal to the cart that would then release, we call it a daughter cart, that would release that cart and it would basically flow to the line. So almost 100% automated, other than the return of the empty cart back to that tugger train. But just in that scenario, we were able to save them hundreds of thousands of dollars.
It's amazing to me. Part of my it happens so much in my job doing what I do that I'm constantly talking to people about technology and all kinds of different industries, and it never ceases to blow me away about what we can accomplish these days with the help of technology. And with that being said, I'll get you out of here on this. What's the next big technology? And I'm going to stick with the supply chain industry. Give me an idea of a technology or two, maybe things we already know about, but maybe is getting ready to take off within the next few years.
Yeah, so I'll tell you this, and I don't want to date myself, but I mean, if you think back to the Jetsons, right? I mean, the Jetsons had Rosie running around the apartment, right?
That's true.
And so technology has been around for decades. And I think the way that the supply chain is embracing it all goes back to shoring up, making sure we don't have another COVID event. So I would almost tell you, I wish I had that crystal ball to tell you what was coming next, but maybe we need to just go back and watch another movie because it's been out there. When we were at Modex, there were thousands of innovative ideas that we saw, and our team walked around in awe. And I even told folks, if it wasn't moving, it was dying. So these manufacturers of these technologies that are coming out, I mean, it was quite impressive. We saw drones that were flying around counting inventory. I think that is really going to hit the ground and get some folks interested in it, because it saves that person from having to go out and count. These drones were counting in seconds. But realistically, I think the next technology that's going to hit the market is what continues to pull all the pieces of the supply chain together. So whether that is helping with speed to market, we saw some AI technology that will leverage lithium and solar to reduce the draw from the grid as far as energy. And we know that is something that is real and is coming. We're even investigating how we can help our customers with that. But I mean, there's so much out there and so much coming. It's going to be something that just further pulls the supply chain together.
I don't even know what to say. Technology never ceases to amaze me, but I'm glad there's someone, Joe, like you, that understands it better than I do. Joe, thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Enjoyed it. Joe Perkins, he is the Executive Vice President for Operations at Carolina Handling. Folks, that concludes another episode of Let's Talk Business South Carolina. I'm so glad you joined us. As always, coming to you from Drum Creative Studio. See you next time.